Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Farmington Board of Education meeting for Monday, October 21st, 2019. If we can please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, that was by far the best pledge. I want to thank all our students in attendance tonight. That was wonderful. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, item 3, approval of minutes. If I could have a motion to approve the minutes for the September 23rd, 2019 regular Board of Education meeting.
Motion. Second.
Any comments, questions, revisions, changes? There being none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Noted. 5B, October 1 enrollment report.
All right, so we have lots to talk about in our enrollment report, and if you turn to page 3, this annual report is very important. It's almost the first report to start our budget process for the coming year. We utilize this report to establish staffing levels for the coming year at each of our schools, and we also utilize it just thinking about facility utilization. And we heard just earlier about some of the stresses in some of our schools on facility capacity and utilization. So if you turn to page 3, you're going to see that the current enrollment, October 1, and that's a very important date for us because this is our official enrollment when the state looks at Farmington and looks at enrollment numbers. So we're at 4,068 students. It does not include all of the students that we are fiscally responsible for, but it does give a nice picture of how many students are in our 7 schools, as well as any students that are out of district, being educated out of district. You'll see that it does represent 63 more students than last year, or a 1.56% increase over the previous year. And on page 8, just go to page 8, this outlines the projection that we had last year. We projected at the same time that on October 1 of this year, we would have 4,078 students. So we were 10 students off in our projection, which is actually very, very good that we were that close. And you'll see that preschool students with special needs, magnet students who require special services, and magnet student tuition that we pay out of for students in the correct magnet schools are not included here, but we want to give an accurate picture of who's sitting in seats in our K-12 schools. Like I said before, we have some outplaced students due to their IEPs, as well as 10 students included in that number of outplaced students who are in our 18 to 21-year-old program. And again, that is based on IEPs. So the report also includes school-by-school enrollment numbers, births, building permits, and housing developments, and the percentage of students in private schools, which is 5.9%, just under 6%, and that's usually where we are every single year. And we've seen this for many, many years. But I just say that with the building permits and housing developments and births, we take all that into account. We also have a cross-check of our enrollment report, which is a 10-year enrollment projection, which we're trending similar to what we had projected even on our 10-year. But because of our FHS facility project, we need to do another 10-year enrollment projection, and we're in the midst of doing that with Peter Prouda, who did our last 10-year enrollment projection. It's really important when you're doing a facility project to do the 10-year enrollment because we take the highest year of enrollment over the next 10 years, and that's how you base your square footage per student on, so it's really important that we do an updated one. On page 15, you're going to see the recommendations of this report. And, you know, one of the things that is really important as you look at the recommendations would be that we are finding that we have a significant number of students here at East Farms. So whether it has to do with the total enrollment or specialized programs, we look at this through the lens of not only what is the capacity of each of our buildings, but what is the utilization of each of our buildings. And East Farms is significantly over-enrolled when you look at the capacity for this building. And it looks like it's going to be trending next year in the same direction and in future years. So Alicia, who is our Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations, and I are going to look with our principal, Renee St. Hilaire, at the East Farms neighborhoods. I think it's probably a good thing to just look at where are the stress points? Why is the enrollment trending in this way, more so than we see in other schools? So that is something that we are looking at. And on page 18, you're going to see both the retention ratio enrollment projections, and that's what we use to budget, and then the push-up numbers. And basically the push-up numbers are if we took everyone and we just pushed them forward, what would the enrollment look like? So you'll see that they usually trend, you know, slightly different, but the more accurate one that we found over the years is the retention ratio. So that's what we use for budgeting. So at times we'll say, we have this many students, and if we pushed all of them forward, we're going to have, you know, this many students, and we find that that doesn't happen, that the retention ratio is much more accurate. But, you know, I open it up to any questions that you might have. You know, I think this is definitely something that we're going to be revisiting throughout this year with the board as we look at all enrollment, but particularly East Farms. I know I say this every year. Yes, Connecticut has declining enrollment. No, Farmington does not have declining enrollment. In fact, we're up. You know, I've been here 11 years, and we're up to where we were 11 years ago. So, I mean, the enrollment has been steady here, and there are a few districts in this region that are similar to Farmington. Avon is experiencing a similar trend, and we have not seen a decline like other districts have experienced.
Liz?
So when I was looking at this, I noticed also, obviously, the East Farms number has stuck out for a few years now. And I mean, there are 6 kindergarten classes here. So,
Yes.
I mean, that means it's going to be at this level for quite some time. And as you just said, though, the most important thing is the building utilization rate, obviously.
Yep.
I mean, you could have a tremendous amount of students in a building, and it could be underutilized. The number itself doesn't mean anything.
Right.
So, what are our other elementary schools like for utilization rates? Do we have any elementary schools that are underutilized or don't have, you know, where are they for utilization rates?
So, you know, we do have some schools that we would consider underutilized. We have put programs in those schools because they're underutilized. So we would put preschools in those schools. East Farms does not have a preschool.
Right.
So you're not going to see preschools. We've put in some schools specialized learning centers and, you know, specialized programming. East Farms doesn't have self-contained special education programming for that reason. So,
but if something's there, then it's not underutilized anymore. I mean, we're not going to just.
You're absolutely right, except for our Excel preschools. We can those are placed in a school that is underutilized. But if, for some reason, that school needed that space, we would have to move the Excel preschool out. That would be something we would do. We've added more Excel preschools because we've had capacity in schools to do that, but Excel knows very clearly, at the moment we would need those classrooms because of K-4 enrollment, we would absolutely utilize those classrooms. So is there some room? Yes. Is there a lot of room in our K-4 schools? No. We're pushing it up against capacity numbers that we don't have a lot of room. And so if we needed to find room, we would be looking at all of our K-4 schools. We'd be looking at our Excel programming, and we would have to make decisions about that and potentially, and Brian Zerio knows this, in our planning of adding the Excel preschools, we were happy to do that, and especially given the fact that if many of you were on the board when we added full-day kindergarten, that was an issue for Excel because they provided the other half day to families who needed it, and we were able to shift to preschool. And it's such a great benefit to our families here that we have the preschool, and we had the room to do it. If Brian was right here, he would say, we need to add more preschools. We have such demand in this community for preschools, but we just don't have any more capacity to add anymore.
Of the elementary schools other than East Farms, do any of the elementary schools have more preschool space, or are they all the same? Do they all have the same amount of preschool enrollment?
Say that again.
Like the three that are like Noah Wallace, Union, and West District, do they all have the same amount of preschool space in them, or do some of them have more?
Some of them have more preschools than others.
Square footage,
More classes, additional classes.
Right.
So, one might have one preschool and it might just be the Excel preschool. And then I think the other two have both a special, it's not called special, it's a collaborative.
Collaborative, right?
Yes, a collaborative preschool and an Excel preschool. So some schools have two and some have one.
Right, okay.
But this school does not have any.
No, I
because we don't-
understand this school doesn't
yeah.
have any, right? No, this
Yeah.
school is full, right? I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah.
All right, so, okay. I had another question, but I forget what it was. All right, thank you.
Yeah, you can look on page 10, there is school enrollment numbers with school capacities next to it, and then you can look at the enrollment projections for the following year. So you can see that, East Farms is well over its capacity. And we've already added in the preschools. So really, if you were to take out the preschools, you're talking about higher capacity numbers at the other schools that have preschool. So we actually lower them because we're utilizing that. We lower the capacity because they're being utilized for preschool. But if we were to take the preschools out, we would increase the capacity. And that's where we would find the room in those schools.
Right, but none of these numbers indicate how many are in the preschool, right?
No.
Right, okay, so we don't know what the capacity would be.
Well, you'd have 2 more classrooms at 2 of the
At
schools
West
and 1 more classroom at another school.
Right, 2 at West District and Union? Right.
2, not at Union,
Not
1
West-
at Union,
Noah
correct?
Wallace and
2 at Noah, right, and 2 at
Noah
West
and
District.
Okay.
I was gonna say, Union doesn't have room for 2.
No,
No way.
only 1 class.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Christy?
So I did have a couple notes reading this weekend, and most of them have already been answered, but I obviously did notice the East Farms number. Because, and I understand you're going to sit down and, project for the future what you need to do for that, but do we need more, special ed, and, do we need more, teachers to handle this amount of students this year? Not just for, planning for the purpose, but do we have enough
No,
that we need?
our staffing is based on need. So
Right, but-
we
okay.
staff depending on, so if there are more students that have special needs in a particular school, there'd be more staffing there. So it's based on IEP hours and also, the needs generally of the students. And Lori works with our principals and Kim Wynn on determining, FTE in special education.
Right. Okay, because obviously, you're going to end up with 6 first grades next year.
Right.
Like,
Right, which is pushing up against the amount of room we have. In the past, I remember, I think during my time, we had music that it wasn't music or art, something like that, where we had to have it on a cart, and that is not ideal, but we've had to do that in the past when we have a situation of overcrowding.
So, Christy?
yeah.
Mark?
Having gone to, my kids went through East Farm, so of
Yes.
course we love this school. We love Renee, so great job with your school here. I guess my quick question would be is that I know when my kids were going here, and I think it's pretty much the same, that a lot of Devonwood residents use this school as well. Now, I don't know if that's still the same, but wouldn't it, if there's 2 classes available at Noah Wallace and there's overcapacity here at East Farms, it seems like there could be like a way to alleviate some pressure there. Is there a reason why we don't look at that situation and say, maybe redirect some of those students to Noah Wallace to take some of the pressure off East Farms? Because it seems to be like halfway between there and East Farms is Noah Wallace.
Right. So, when I first arrived this school as superintendent 11 years ago, this school had very high enrollment, and then we had the 10-year projection, and we could clearly see that it was hard to believe, and I remember at the time it was hard even for the parents and families to say, okay, we're going to trust the projections, but they actually did go down. So it ebbs and flows in a district as far as enrollment. I think in the Peter Prouda projection, and I'm thinking off the top of my head, it was like Union and East Farms were 2 pressure points because of housing developments in the Union school. There's always a turnover of housing in a particular neighborhood, school. So we watch those trends occur and we project out. So the last time we had high enrollment, we really didn't have to do anything with the district lines because it went down, and it went down by quite a bit. Now we're on an upturn again, and we really have to look at Peter Prouda's 10-year new projections and say, are there like stronger actions that the board would have to take? But if the enrollment projections say the same thing's going to happen, why would we ever disrupt, families if we know the enrollment projection is saying that we're going down again? So I think that's another good reason to have the 10-year projections redone, because we want to see, what changed in the last few years. And so when the Peter Prouda projections come in, from that individual, we would then share it with the board and potentially have a different conversation. I think now taking, a careful approach, looking at where the pressure points are, and then, having a discussion about it. By that time, those projections should come in the next 10 years, and then we can have, a really informed discussion with the 10-year projections right here for us. And he will do the 10-year projections by school. In the past, the last time he did it by school because we wanted to make sure we were looking at our elementary neighborhoods, and we are asking him to do that again. But in the past, it wasn't done that way. It was just whole district K-4 projections, and it just isn't as useful if we don't have school-by-school projections.
Just to go to Sarah's point, 40 kids in a kindergarten class seems like an awfully big number to.
Oh, additional.
Not in a class.
Not in a classroom.
Not in one class.
Oh, I thought you were saying it was pushing close to 40.
No, we have 16, well, the next report will tell you how
know,
many.
well,
We have
nervous
class
here. I'm
size,
like,
Kim
why
will
we
cover
have
that.
2 extra classes?
Yeah, so they're low class size, it's just that we had to add a kindergarten or 2. I can't remember if it was 1 or 2. And if we were to continue to see that trend as students move up, that's too many classes per grade level, and we would have to really look at that. So again, I think looking at the 10-year projections when we get them in will give us, a discussion at the board level to say what are our action steps going forward. This happened before, and we didn't have to take any action steps, but we're going to keep an eye on it.
Liz?
I remembered my other question. Okay. So also just, the building is overutilized, it's full. So, but I just want to be clear that there are no safety concerns and all of the students are getting everything that they need, right? And if they weren't, we would make sure that they were getting everything.
Right.
If we thought there were any education problems or equity problems, we would make sure
Yeah.
that they were getting everything they need.
Absolutely.
There's one nurse here, but there's one nurse at IAR, and
Yeah.
there's one nurse at Westwoods. They have many more students than here. So like everything is okay with the services they're getting, and we feel that that's up to standards and.
And if you remember, you had approved a floating nurse. So
Right,
as
exactly.
needs become available, we can deploy the floating nurse to a
Exactly.
particular school. And we do so when we have certain screenings that have to happen and we want to do it in a
Yep.
short amount of time. I should also say, I shouldn't forget, and Alicia would not want me to forget this. East Farms has a pretty exciting project coming up, and next year, we may not have a media center ready.
Right.
Because we're moving our office, just like we're doing with all of our schools, to the front of the building, because that is, a safety standard that we want to meet. We're going to have a security vestibule here, like we've done in other schools. And the exciting part of this project that really hasn't been part of other projects is that we have a programmatic improvement that will happen. So we have an undersized media center here. And while we were looking at this project, we said, well, we could fix a programmatic issue, and that is to take where the library is now, Library Media Center is now, and we're going to flip to the other side of the hallway where the office is right now, and the book room and the faculty room and conference room. And that's going to be the media center. It's going to be a much larger media center. And for this enrollment, you need a larger media center. So we're excited about that, but it is a pretty detailed project that may take longer than just a summer to complete. So that is another issue that I know Renee, Alicia, myself, Kim, we're all going to work together with Tim Harris, with our architects, to try to minimize disruption. But it is a reality that it's a wonderful project and it's going to be great for East Farms, but there may be some, time where there isn't a media center available
Right.
here.
Yeah, that is going to be great. And Ms. St. Hilaire does a great job with all of the children here.
And she has seen it all because she's been here
Yeah.
over 10 years, so she's seen the ebb and flow of enrollment over that time.
All right, that's what I forgot, so thank you.
Mark, you're good? Okay. I don't know if I missed it, Kathy. What's the turnaround time on the 10-year study?
Well, it's been in the works for a few weeks.
Okay.
I would think, I'm hoping, because we also have the FHS facility project, within the next 4 weeks, that we would get that, and then we would put it on a board
Yep, okay,
agenda.
yep. Thanks. Okay, any additional questions for Kathy on that? All right, thank you. Next item, 5C, the Fall 2019 Summative State Assessment Results.
So our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Veronica Ruzick, and Assistant Superintendent Kim Wynn are going to provide an overview of the summative testing report. We do this every year for the board. And this report reflects the 2018-2019 achievement results. It also includes the new science assessment. And if you remember, we had made a lot of changes to our curriculum in science to align to NGSS. And now we have our first assessment under those NGSS standards.
Okay. So I'll jump into the report. So these are, this is an assessment we give in the spring every year. We actually now get the results, at least from the ELA and the math, quite quickly. And so, but we don't get the actual student score reports until the fall. So those came back to parents several weeks ago, and then We just got the science reports. They're being really, at the moment, like stamped, and will go out by the end of the week, this week for the science scores. And I will go through this, but I just want to say a couple of things. First, in terms of the data that we gather from an assessment like this, this is like sort of a one-shot deal, and we like having an external assessment of what we do. But we have a lot of internal data points that we look at for a lot of our programming. So this is sort of another check on our work and another data point, but not certainly the only data point we look at. We know a lot more about students, and there's a lot of times when we say, wow, that's strange, and we could look into it more. Why did the student score that way? That's not consistent. So in any case, there's a lot behind all these numbers and all the children and all the stories. And I just want to assure you that at every school, there are many people who are very in tune to all of those things. No student is just this number that you see here, and we're going to discuss tonight. I also want to point out that we don't really, in Farmington, prep for the test. We don't take a week or 2 weeks and stop instruction and instruct towards this test. However, we do, look at the test items, the kinds of questions that are asked, and try to integrate them into some of the things that we do, just to be fair. We don't want students to be surprised or not know the technology and all that. So we have been very thoughtful and deliberate about putting the kinds of, question stems and the way that they ask questions and the, performance tasks, those kinds of things have been integrated into our curriculum, but not in a way that like now we're doing test prep. And especially where we think that the practices and the assessments are aligned to what we believe in anyway, which especially with the performance tasks in math, we think that's an excellent task and way to assess students. I also want to say that any student who has a 504 or an IEP does get accommodations on the test appropriate to what they would get in class, of course. And there are some students that are not represented in this because 1% of the population takes an alternative assessment, but those scores are never really made public as it's such a small percentage of the population. And again, the science I will talk about, but it's the first time, so you'll see a lot of incomplete data that I'd like to have in a couple of weeks that I'll send in a separate report to you and, through Kathy, just so that you can see once we get they said late fall, we will get some comparison data on the science. So I'll talk about that when we get there, because there's not a lot to dig into there at the moment. So I just wanted to sort of say the way that I've always thought about this report when I first designed it, and now I sort of just update it every year and do a couple of tweaks to it, is first I thought it would be good to just give you sort of the overall picture. So at first for each ELA and math, you get sort of an overall picture and historical. Then I compare us to the DIRG, because it's always like, okay, that's great, but what does that mean in terms of where we fall in the, in the state and in our demographic reference group? Then I give data about that cohort. I want you to know, like, is the cohort making progress over time or not? So that's the third sort of level of analysis. And then, of course, one of the great things about this assessment is that you get a growth analysis to see whether the students are growing over time, which is one of the benefits of having this scale score that goes through the years. And then I give you data about what it looks like disaggregated. As you know, that's a huge part of our final score on that report card that I share then in the spring when we look at those performance profile reports. And a lot of our points come from how we're doing with subgroups and especially high needs students. So I wanted to make sure that you sort of get a preview of that in this report. So those are sort of the 5 levels of analyses. I'm going to say just a mouthful about each one of those, just to give you an idea of how, overall we did on this assessment. We always have, I'm just going to, I'll point you to pages, but on page 5, it just says we have great participation. So you can see the numbers there. That represents about, 1 or maybe 2 students in every class, maybe. That doesn't take it. In some places you can see that there's 100% participation. On page 6, I would just like to point out 2 really strong points there that I'd like to highlight. One is that more of our students are in the level 4 band each year, which is sort of amazing. And the gap between us, you see on page 7, and the state, that's one of the ways I try to gauge, like, are we making progress over time? That gap continues to grow there. There is, you'll hear me say a couple of times, we did have one grade this year that was of concern, which is 5th grade. And we know that, and it happens to be a year where a lot of our teachers were absent. There were a lot of maternity leaves and other things, so there were a lot of substitute teachers in that year. So what ended up happening was that there were a lot of students in interventions, and our interventionists, our literacy and math coaches, specialists, couldn't spend as much time coaching because they were doing interventions, and so they couldn't keep up with the demand for what was going on there. So in fact, when we get to the math section, I'll talk a little bit about how big of an impact I do think that something like that does have. And I see Alicia out of the corner of my eye shaking in her head because she was there last year, so she knows that year and the sort of difficulties we had in that. And that, unfortunately, that happened. So in terms of ELA, though, our overall achievement, I think, continues to be very strong. And in fact, like I said, growing each year in the 2 ways that I mentioned. On page 8, then, is the DERG, the Demographic Reference Group comparison. And you can see we were quite strong in our DERG. And I think that, Kathy has several times sort of said that, our demographics have been changing over time. And so any time that we could, on these kinds of things, rise or stay even, we're actually sort of beating the trend, so to speak, because of the way that our demographics are changing over time. In fact, when you think about our high needs population, I just calculated it just in case somebody asked me, but it's good to put out there, 25% of our 7th through 8th grade, third through 8th grade, which are the grades that are tested and represented in this report, 25% qualified as high needs, which is much higher than it has been in the past. So you should just know that and it's higher than a lot of these other districts that we compare ourselves to. I can get you those numbers if you were ever interested, but that's a lot higher than some of these places. Maybe not a West Hartford, but some of the other ones sort of in these top numbers were higher. There's a comparison there of the elementary schools. In terms of page 9, you can see that's another level of analysis I try to give you, so you can look at that. Most of the time you can see there's growth. You can see what their average was really in the 3rd grade, and then over time where they end, towards as they get through the year. So in most cases, you can see growth there. The current 7th graders, so those were 6th graders last year, pretty stable. It started at 83, now it's at 81. I would hope that in the next 2 years that would still grow and more students would meet that level 3 or level 4. And then, like I said, I really like this one, the growth analysis, although sometimes this looks like a disconcerting number because we don't like to see anything in the 50s. It's like, oh, 53, that's got to be bad. I want to assure you that that's actually good. Okay, so I know I can't say it seems silly even to say that, but so on page 9 you can see growth rate. 53% of our students met the growth target. So each student has a certain number of points, depending on how many they earned the year before, that they have to make. So it might be 80 points it has to grow, or 100 points you have to grow. And these are set at a level so that only 40% of students would actually meet that number. So the fact that 53% made that number is 13% higher than what the state would expect. And truly, if you look at the state's number of how many students met their target, overall in the state, it was 39.9. And in Farmington, it's 53% that meet that rigorous number. That's like a high number in order to get. So, you would think, oh, wait, you want every kid, you want 100% of them to make their growth targets, but they're set so that only 40% can get there.
Veronica, is that individually for each student?
So
each student gets a goal to grow?
Correct, but it's
just,
within a band.
Okay.
So there's 4 bands, and then there's a high, low in each band. So depending on where you qualify, they give you would need this many points, and the chart is attached. It's in or I hope you have the appendices, but I don't actually, oh yes. The appendix is on page 21, and that shows you exactly what I mean. So page 21 shows you exactly what I mean in terms of the numbers that you would need.
in order. So if you are in grade 3 and you got level 1 not met, you need to make 71 points by the next year in order to have met. And if you get those 71 points, you count as a 1. If you don't make it, you count as a 0. And that's how you get the percentage of students who met their growth target.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just wanted-
Yeah, but that's good. I'm glad you pointed us to that page, because the next number, which is the average percent of growth target met, another thing the state wants to tell us, indicate to us, is, okay, so we know that some kids didn't make that absolute number. Like, they didn't make the 71 points, but like, what percentage did they make? You know, so that's that second number. So maybe a student, they were supposed to get 71, but they got 69, let's say. Well, they just got almost like 90-something% of their points. So the state wants to give you credit for the 90-something% that student got. So then they take that number for each student and, you know, average it out for the whole district. And that's what ours is. So our students earned 70.7% of their points available, which is high because in the state, they earned 59.9% of the points that they were supposed to get. So that's about 60%. So let's say you're supposed to make 100. That means most kids will make 60 points, but in Farmington, they'll make 71 points. Yeah, so that's how that works. And so again, on all of these analyses, I would say Farmington is very strong. In our DIRG, you don't have that level of analysis here, but again, strong. In fact, one of the highest. That's how we get a lot of our points then too, in the report card at the end of the year, because they score us on growth and then the high needs growth, and so those are all very, very healthy scores. And then on page 10, that's the disaggregated data. So you can take a quick look at that. Again, equity gaps persist. We know that. We work really hard on that. We do outperform the state in every category, but those gaps still exist. So one level of analysis that may be interesting, though, is that we do, in terms of, that's where you can look at, instead of the absolute numbers, at the growth. And there, in ELA, our high needs students do outperform the state on both the growth rate and the growth target met in that high needs category, but not by a ton. Like, we would love for that number to be higher. And so in terms of that, that's something that we're definitely going to study. We have we know that, it's sort of, a lot of those students we know by 3rd grade who are going to struggle, and so we have a early childhood committee committed to looking at some of this and seeing what are the factors that really drive that, so that if we could get every student into a good place by the 3rd grade, what kind of impact will that have going late, in the future. And it's not that we haven't worked on it before, but you always think, okay, so if we give more students kindergarten, is a preschool, is that the solution? Oh, they still have the gaps. Okay, full day kindergarten, oh, they still have the gaps. So we're just gonna have to dig deeper now and really try to get more, like, what are the things that are gonna have the highest impact in trying to move the needle on those. Again, we do better than the state on all of these things. We do better than our DIRG in general on many of these things. So we know we're doing well, but we're never satisfied in Farmington until we do, even though, we want it to be all. We mean it when we say all means all. So we're never satisfied when we see these kinds of numbers. But practically speaking, I have to know that these are decent numbers. We just, obviously, in Farmington always want it to be better. So that's the ELA. So I'll stop now if there's any questions, and then I'll do the same sort of thing for math and move us through it kind of quickly, now that you have even more background on what all those are. Questions on ELA?
Questions for Veronica?
No.
Thank you.
I'll take that as a thorough job that I'm doing.
You can infer that, yeah.
I do love listening to you, because you're very educated on all of this.
Thank you. I spent a lot of time on this, believe it or not.
And we thank you for that.
No, I appreciate it.
And then, so math, on math, page 11, if you want to keep up with where we are. Again, that percentage at level 4 FPS, 51.8% of our students are at level 4, whereas in the state is 25.1. That's like a huge difference right there. Again, 75% meeting across the district. And then on page 12, that shows you the historical comparison. Now, notice that, from 2018 was sort of a stellar year there in terms of the difference between us and the state. So I recalculated. I kind of said, well, what if that 5th grade class that I said before, what if they held steady? We would have had a much higher average. The average goes up then by, it went from, I'm sure I have it still on my calculator here, but it would have, I know what it is. It's, it would have been 76.5 so it would have gone up exactly 2 percentage points. And so then that would have been our highest gap ever. Now, I can't always say, oh, what could have been? It's like not really fair analysis, but out of curiosity, I had to look it up because I just know that was just, I just wanted to see how much of a difference one grade, one cohort could make. And it is that 2 percentage points that it makes. Just out of curiosity, I looked that up just to see. So anyway, so that's where we are. So it's not the largest gap that we've ever had, but it's still, a pretty large gap between us and the state. Now our cohort analysis, I say analysis, but I can't really give you an analysis. You really have the numbers there, and they're up and down. There's not a trend that I could point to. Some grades go up, down, it's hard to tell. So where it says, and I don't know if you can read this very well, but basically it's saying, look, you read it across. So you see current 4th grade, so there you see, all they have is 3rd grade scores, right? And then current 5th graders, so there you see their 3rd grade scores and their 4th grade scores. Of course, they don't have 5th grade scores, they're only in 5th grade now, they won't take it till the spring. So that's how you read it. You just take your finger, go across, and you can see the whole line. So again, current 6th, that's that 5th grade class I was talking about, a drop of 11%. That's one of the largest drops I've seen. So anyway, I don't want to focus on that anymore too much, but I just wanted to let you know that we do know that that's an issue. We know why. We're on top of it. We're doing what we can to make sure we have a better year with those students this year. And then in math, you can see we actually, in terms of growth, we do better in math than we do in ELA. And math is sort of a harder subject in terms of, the state averages and all that, but we do better. So you can see that 60% or 58% of our students meet that number that they're supposed to, and then meet 75% of their goal number overall. And actually, I did the analysis for high needs on this too. You don't have it there, but there too, our high needs population of students, 41.7% of our high needs students meet the target. You don't have that number there, but I was able to get it. And all this is publicly available on EdSite, but 41.7% of our high needs students meet it, which is comparable to the entire state of Connecticut, which includes high needs and non-high needs students. So our high needs students do as well as the average Connecticut student in terms of growth in math, which I think is pretty impressive. Same thing in the percentage of target met. Our high needs students, 61.2%. They meet 61.2% of all their numbers, which for the state of Connecticut is 62.5. So again, our high needs students perform as well as a regular Connecticut student in terms of growth on this test. On page 14, are these out of order? Anyway, on page, we all have them the same, but on page 14, there's the DIRG-B comparison. Again, right, I told you we would have been at 76.5%, so we would have been second in the DIRG, but I said I wouldn't dwell on it, so I shouldn't bring that up again. But again, still a strong showing. These are all little percentages here, and then you can see in the math on page 15, there's a subgroup analysis, and you can look at those numbers there. Again, Equity issues, definitely, but we do perform better than the state. Obviously, you can see that there. Okay, so those are the results. Again, this is just, again, I just want to reiterate, I think it's so important. This is just one indicator for us. We have so many more internal indicators that we think are even more important than this one. So this one is sort of the public face. It's on public ed site. Website. This is how we get compared. You'll see it in, the newspaper when these scores come out, and they do all sorts of analyses. So this is one that a lot of people focus on. But we do a lot of data before in order to get these kinds of scores and change outcomes for kids and work with them, give them high quality instruction and high quality interventions as needed. So, this is one that's, when we triangulate data, we certainly put it on all of our, sheets to take a look at, but it's just one factor. And so anyway, so that's the quick overview of both the ELA and the math. So I'll take questions there, and then we'll move on to science.
Any questions?
Okay.
Yeah.
So science, and that starts on page 23. And then all the appendices, so this is kind of out of order because the appendices are like before the last part, but it's okay. And you can see how each, there I give you how each class scored versus the DIRG and all that. So interesting things, but not all that necessary to go into detail about all those. So we had a new assessment. You've heard about that assessment. I know that I came to the board with Tara at one point to show you aspects of the test, what it would look like, and to show you how we've aligned our curriculum to meet the expectations of that assessment. And so you got to see some of the projects we've put into place and why we put them and the kinds of questions that they ask. And so these are a lot more, the questions that are asked now are a lot more doing science kinds of questions. Like, can you look at data and offer an interpretation using some background knowledge in order to tell us what this is all about? So rather than, there are multiple choice questions, but they're more like thinking and reasoning kinds of questions that go along with some sort of data set or some information that students are given about an experiment or about a real life phenomenon that then they have to interpret. But apply background knowledge to. So background knowledge still important, but the thinking is sort of more important. So on page 23, it just describes we're back to four levels. So the old CMT had 5 levels, but this has 4 levels. So it's very much in line with what you're seeing in the Smarter Balanced Assessment, 4 levels. We will never have growth scores. Students take this test in grades 5, 8, and 11, and so there's no promise of a vertical scale score, and you can see that there. In grade 5, you can only get these numbers. So it's not like you could be in 8th grade and then get numbers that are below the 8th grade score. So they're not saying that this is going to be a growth situation with this. It's 3 years apart, and they're not giving us any indication that they're growing. You're going to have, whether they're on the low end of the scale score range or higher, but that's what determines the achievement level. But beyond that, there's no other analysis that will be done for growth. On page 24, that's where our scores are. And so you can see in 5th grade, just look at the FPS percent at level 3 and 4, which is the meets or exceeds. So it's 80%. That's a high number. It's not the highest that we've ever been, but this is a new test. This is a new assessment. So the state is saying, don't really compare it to the past. And I can't give you that chart that I give you where it says, well, how much of a gap was there between us and the state? Because none of those numbers are available. Because that's a level of analysis I would give you so that you kind of say, like, okay, are we, widening the gap between us and the state? But none of that's available right now. In 8th grade, almost 81% of our students met the goal. Again, that's a very high number. And then in grade 11, this is an unprecedented number for the high school, where in the past we've been in the 70s, sometimes even high 60s, mostly in the 70s, but 84.4% of students met the goal in 11th grade. So that's a very high number. Again, I mean, you know, I do talk to people, so I do know that in our DERG, I haven't heard yet of any school that was higher from the people that I've talked to. But again, I don't want to, you know, say too much about that. But we'll see in a couple of weeks how we compare in the state and in our DERG. And then on page 25. They also tried to give us a little bit of a discipline level analysis. So they broke out the test into life science, physical science, and then earth and space. And so you can see how our students did in those three categories. Unfortunately, so I relabeled, so it says below, then it says at approaching and above. The at approaching, I made that up because the state calls it approaching, but it's really a misnomer. It makes it sound like, oh, my student's only approaching. And that's what the score reports are going to say. They're going to say approaching. But it really means that the state can't make a determination if you were at or approaching. So they just lumped it all together. There's just not enough test questions in each of those to make a final determination. So they can only make a determination if you're above. They can make the determination if you're below. Those two are clear. And in the middle, they kind of go, not sure. And they call that approaching. So I call it at approaching. Because it's scary when you're a parent and you get home and it says like life sciences approaching. It's not. It's at or approaching. They just couldn't make a distinction, and they called it that for some reason. I'm not sure. So anyway, so there you see that, and it shows you just how many students we have again above. I think that, you know, the way that we've done our curriculum, all these topics are, you know, spread out, touched upon each year. So you don't see a lot of strengths or weaknesses in one versus another. So that level of analysis doesn't give me a ton of information to go on. Although you do see in the 11th grade, certainly life science, which I would hope is the strongest because that's their year they take biology. So it makes sense that that's like the strongest one. And earth space science is the weakest one. They're farther away from anything that had to do with earth and space science. So something we definitely have to look at for the high school. But again, that was the high, you know, the 84.4 is a very strong number of students, percentage of students that are meeting the target. And then on page 26, you have the demographic, the subgroup analysis there. So you can take a look quickly there. Again, very strong, but we don't have anything to right now compare it to in terms of the state. So we were very happy with these scores, but you can see that it doesn't give us a lot of, you know, it doesn't give us a lot of direction in terms of this is the only level of analysis, but that's okay because we also don't want to be in a situation where we test prep. So that's not our goal anyway. So for us, this level of analysis, you know, is enough. I mean, you know, we feel like we have a strong science program. We work hard at it to make it, you know, engaging, phenomenon-based, interesting, helping students understand the world around them. So I think that these numbers right now reflect that. Again, we'll never be happy until it's 100%, but I think that these are very strong scores. Okay.
Any questions for Veronica? Thank you, Veronica. That's
Great.
fascinating information. I guess just one question. I mean, obviously, you can get very granular on this stuff, but are there big picture, macro level curriculum takeaways you get from all this?
I think just to continue working on our equity, you know, really digging deep and seeing what are the things that we can change there to get more students, you know, to feel successful, to be successful on these. So I think that that's the big takeaway here. But you know, overall, we are doing well. But that's definitely an issue we think about and worry about.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, Andrea.
Do you have an opinion on why there's less of a gap between the boys and the girls in the sciences, and not you know, in math and writing?
Less of a gap because there's a bigger
there's
gap.
less of a gap.
Yeah, and
in
so
the science
yes,
versus the other one.
so interesting. So
because
just
there's math and writing in the science.
yeah. So I don't know, and the science scores are very fresh in terms of that. But I'm actually, you know, we're bucking the trend in terms of the math, because in general in math, boys in the state, although now it's pretty even, but historically It was very much, girls scored better on ELA, boys scored better on the math. And so anyway, but now you can see, and in Farmington especially, that gap is the other way. So I don't know. I mean, I do think that, I don't know. I mean, certainly I do think that the test is somewhat engaging. The science test is somewhat engaging. It's puzzles to solve, and so maybe people will persist with it a little bit longer. So that may be it. We've done some analysis, although it's hard to do, but sometimes we do look at things like how long students spent on the test, so we could see there are some students that sort of rush through the test and all that. So that's another level of analysis to do more of, to see if, that may be why. But yeah, we do have that gap, and we've been able to erase it even in ELA certain years, and boys have scored as well as girls, and but this year is a bigger gap than actually usual for us in ELA. So I'm not exactly sure, but it could be just the the interest that they had in the test itself.
Has there been any research done in terms of when they changed math to more of a Common Core curriculum, as when that gap started to take place?
Yeah, so I would say that probably, there's a lot more reading and writing in math than there was before, right? There are performance tasks, and now you have to not only crunch numbers, but you have to be able to explain your thinking and write about it and all that. So I do think that has had an impact of why maybe in Farmington we're seeing the girls outperforming boys even on the math part of the test. So yeah, but I don't think it's, in Common Core, those are just a set of standards. The Common Core is a set of standards.
No, but the difference in the math, the explanations versus the traditional math that was done beforehand. I'm just wondering when the gap started to take place, if it's in correlation with the new math that have been introduced over time.
Quite honestly, it also goes up and down each year. So to say that it's a trend over time, we don't have enough data to say it's a trend. Like one year it'll be like this, and then the other year, it will be, so it's hard to say that right now that there's some sort of trend, but I could look into that a little more and send them info to Kathy about that.
All right, thank you, Veronica.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. You're up, Butterfield.
Okay, next item on the agenda, 5D, October class size report. Kim?
So this is another annual report, and this will very much align to our enrollment reports. Okay.
These are all very good reports, though.
All,
Yes.
yes, very
These are
thorough.
very important. Greatly appreciated.
So the class size report is prepared in conjunction with the enrollment report, and it just gives you a more detailed look at how the enrollment breaks down in terms of specific classes. So I'm going to start on page 7. This page is where you can see a breakdown of class sizes and enrollment totals by grade and by school. And I was going to highlight the 6 kindergarten classes in these farms, but I don't think I need to do that. It's the talk of the night. But there you can see that, we are within our class size policy, and again, in keeping with our tradition of trying to keep the class sizes smaller in the earlier grades by intention. On pages 8 through 10, you see a snapshot of how classes break down in terms of art, music, and PE, and some world language classes in grades 5 and 6. On page 12, those pages begin the distribution, a look at what percent or how many classes we have that are of a particular size. So how many classes do we have in that are students, 18 students or 19 students? That's what the chart shows you. And I know that in the chart above, we do adhere to the minimum class size policy of 19.5 students overall in grades K through 4. And you don't have that calculation there, but
If you were to calculate grades K through 4 separately, it's 19.8. So just to assure you that we are within policy. Moving on to the middle school on page 16. Here are our core academic classes. And again, you can see the distribution of the number of students in each class in the various subject areas. And then on the following page, you see the number of students in the classes for art, world languages, music, APE, the special areas at the middle school. And I know this can be a little confusing, but there are students who take these classes sometimes 2 days a week, 3 days a week. So I think you've heard this before, and that's why it looks like there's so many classes there, when in fact it's just the number of days per week that the teacher is having an A and a B class. The remaining pages of this report are about the high school. And again, the high school's challenge is different than in the other grades in that students are electing courses at the high school. So in these pages, you see the breakdown of classes by subject area. And they are often driven by student choice, the number of students who are looking to take a particular class. So sometimes you'll see higher than anticipated enrollment or lower than anticipated enrollment. And that's simply because of the numbers of students who elected to put that class into their schedule. And sometimes you'll see a distribution that looks a little odd. But again, the high school is trying to accommodate all scheduling requests, all class requests for students to the best of their ability, and those classes can sometimes conflict in a student's schedule. So it's not as though they can take the total number of students wanting to take this class and divide it up by the number of sections offered, and it comes out even. Sometimes to avoid class conflicts, one class of that course is a little larger than another class, and they do the very best they can, but they're not always balanced equally. You see that list of higher than expected demand or lower than expected demand on page 26, where you see, I indicate for you, classes that have what we would consider to be high enrollment or low enrollment. We keep a close eye on these things and, consider our recommendations in the budget process for the following year. There may come a time when we decide we've had such low enrollment in a particular class that we decide that we're not going to offer that class anymore, or many fewer sections of a particular class. One thing I wanted to highlight in this report are the Capstone classes, and they are both listed within the department in which they're taught. But also on page 25, you see a full listing of the Capstone classes offered at the high school this year. And we have a total of 136 students enrolled in Capstone, in one Capstone course or another. So that's a very high number. It's something we're really proud of and excited about. And so I think that just gives you a brief overview. I'd rather respond to your questions than go into the minutia of the report. So.
Thank you very much, Kim. Any questions for Kim?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment.
Absolutely.
I noticed that the personal finance, you have like 11 classes. That's a big hit at the high school, huh?
Yes, it's become very popular.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, it's good.
It
bodes well for our society if we have young people who know how to handle their finances.
Yes.
Parents should be happy about
Yes,
that.
it's a good life skill to have.
Hopefully we have home ec. Would be all set.
I would like.
How about an update on sign language? Any luck?
Oh, yeah. No, we
No luck on sign language yet?
haven't.
Yeah.
I think so.
But we're trying to collaborate with another
Yeah,
district,
yeah.
so we hope so.
For what?
Sign language. No, I know. When I look at the list of classes, I just want to ask if anything's developed there because I know it's in high demand.
Well, I've
For some
also
reason, I thought
found
we
out,
approved it already.
No, we just can't
can't
find
find
the
the
teacher. The
Yeah,
teacher's the problem.
Really had a hard time.
Tony?
Canton offers
people
American
do
Sign
sign
Language
language,
through an online learning program called Proximity Learning, and so I'm going to go take a look at that, just as a last resort, if maybe we can't find a person. It is, there is a teacher who.
Like a video conference?
Yeah, so there's, what do they call that? Oh, I can't get my words.
Like a hybrid
You know, like sometimes it's. No, it wasn't synchronous. You know, it's like some days you're in a classroom and you turn on your computer and the teacher's right there online. So it's virtual instruction, and some days it's on your own teaching, practicing with the support of the program itself, which seems to be something that, yeah, you might be able to manage for this kind of class. So I'm going to go take a look at it. Canton's had great success with it, so we'll see.
I would imagine the students who enroll in that class are somewhat motivated. I mean, they're there for a reason,
Yeah,
so it's
they're
not like-
excited about
Yeah,
taking the
right,
course. It's,
right.
you know, it's not a requirement.
Right.
It's something they really want to learn, so.
Kim, you look at some of the stuff, I mean, are there any major takeaways from, like Spanish 4 honors is very low enrollment, but Spanish 5 is high enrollment? I mean, is there any trends there that you see? Like, is Spanish declining in interest, or?
No, I don't think Spanish is.
Okay, because the
declining.
4 honors it's in the low enrollment.
Yeah. I think that.
Spanish 5 remains high.
Right, right. So sometimes it's just the class, you know,
okay.
the cohort of
Yeah,
students
okay, yeah.
itself.
Okay, just wondering generally if you're seeing any,
Yeah, I
change in the.
don't see that as a trend.
Okay, yeah.
So,
Okay. Liz?
Well, how many sections of Spanish 4 honors are there? Is that just one section? or
2,
is that-
looks like.
Yeah, so is that, there's 2 sections of Spanish 4 honors and 8 people total?
That's what it looks like.
Oh.
Yeah, no, it just seemed odd to me. That's it.
let me get to the page.
All right, I mean-
No.
No, it's just period 2.
Period
It's not 2
two is
classes.
eight.
Yeah,
It's 8
that's
kids.
One is
period 2.
23.
And- Yeah, because I was going to say that doesn't seem possible,
Yes.
because,
One of them is 8, one of them is 23.
Right.
Yeah,
So
there are
it's just the way it
5
worked out.
sections
Right.
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah,
Right.
it's just that
Oh,
one
okay.
period is.
Yeah, that's
Just
the-
that one
just that
period,
one
okay.
period has
Okay,
low
okay,
enrollment
yep.
because
Right.
of conflicts with other
So
Okay, yep.
it just might be a shuffle.
Yeah, it might be a
Yeah,
shuffling
right.
thing. Okay, yeah, yeah. Okay, thanks. Any other questions?
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you, Kim.
Welcome.
Okay, the next item, 5E, Engage Learning Update.
So FHS is highlighting their 2020 National Merit Scholarship semifinalists. IAR submitted, it was a similar update but with different students on empowering readers and learners, and also included a Farmington faculty member conference that several of our teachers went to. Noah Wallace, second graders have been engaged with their teacher, developing classroom norms and expectations. They also highlighted several curriculum items. And East Farms, very much like this evening, provided some of their social and emotional work and some updates there that are aligned to curriculum that are specifically in 4th grade. Westwood's highlighted integration of Spanish and mathematics in 6th grade. Union provided an overview of their focus on Constitution Day, and our own Bill Beckert was a visitor there for that. And West District is recognizing students who go above and beyond the 3 Bs, which are be safe, be respectful, and be responsible. So those are our updates.
Thank you, Kathy. Next item, 5F, Professional Appointments, Retirements, and Resignations. I'm happy to see Nancy Ladish return.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Support at East Farm.
Yeah,
To
no. it's,
support East Farms
I don't know which,
at a particular grade level, yes.
my kids at West District had her
Yeah.
years ago, I mean, so.
She missed us so much.
Yeah.
She moved away and
Oh,
came right back.
No, it's great to have Nancy back. That's great. All right. Next item, 6A, Budget Impact Budget Update. Alicia?
So
similar to what I spoke about at our last meeting, we're still taking a kind of a conservative approach to our spending and a collaborative approach. Self-insurance continues to be an area we look at closely. We received a recent payment from Cigna for approximately $116,000 because we hit our aggregate stop loss, which is the first time we've ever hit that. So that, although it's, mixed news, it's not something we're celebrating at the same time. That's why it's put in place to offset the high utilization. So that payment certainly came at a good time. Our grant numbers are starting to come in, so we have a better sense of where we are with our grants, and so far they've all come in at the amount that we've projected, or in some cases slightly higher, so that's all good news. Nothing's taken a major cut there, so now we're starting to look at those and make some decisions regarding our grants. Special education continues to be another area. Again, as I said last time, we're approaching the budget season, believe it or not, for next year. So at our next meeting, I'm going to be sharing with you the budget booklet for the upcoming year. So as we continue to monitor the budget for this year, we're also being mindful for how we plan ahead for next year. I think next month's report will be kind of, I would say, more settled in where we are in the financials with some of the things that have come in recently in terms of just settled in our staffing and more of our grants, and have a better sense of whether we need to kind of continue in this conservative manner. So,
Okay.
any questions?
No, thank you. Any questions? All right. Thank you very much, Alicia. Excuse me. Next item, 7, new business, 7A, 2019 policy updates, first reading. If I can have a motion to approve the 2019 policy updates, first reading?
Motion?
Second.
Okay.
Okay, so our policy committee met, and we have several updates. These all are all but one related to legislative changes. The first is the non-discrimination policy 1220, and this is revising it to clarify that discrimination based on citizenship status is prohibited by law. So that's the only change in that particular policy. In policy 2120, that's the one that is not a legislative change, but a change here in Farmington, which is the administrative organizational chart, which we had replaced business administrator with our assistant superintendent of finance and operations, so that it's accurate and current. And the next, let's see, 4001, employment and student teacher checks. This was related to Public Act 1991, and it revised the requirements for conducting criminal background checks. It now requires schools to conduct national and state criminal background checks for student teachers, and requires that all prospective employees explain in writing whether they've been convicted of a crime and if charges are pending. So it also clarifies fees for student teacher background checks. The next is just related, again, this is on the personnel side to non-discrimination, including that citizenship status. 5119, homeless children and youth. This is related to Public Act 19-179, and it includes changes concerning the hearing and appeal process afforded to school-age homeless children and youth who are denied access to school accommodations. And it also further revised or clarified the rights of unoccupied youth. So if they're on their own, it's just clarifying that as well. Then there is a change in sunscreen application in school. So you'll see that change in 5141.5. And then in 5142, food allergies. This feedback was provided by the Office of Civil Rights, so there's revisions there to the protections provided to students with life-threatening food allergies, and revisions also clarify students who have food allergies or diabetes. So that they are always students with disabilities and should be referred to a Section 504 team. So that's just further clarification. And then we're back to non-discrimination. So it hits both community, personnel, and now student policy. And again, that's the citizenship status change. And then Section 504 ADA. And this just updated the complaint procedures and the administrative regulations associated with this policy. And it was provided by the Office of Civil Rights. So those are all the changes for our first reading.
Any questions, comments? Okay, the motion to approve the first reading of the 2019 policy updates, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Next item on the agenda, 7B, review and consideration of the 2018-2019 school district annual report. If I can have a motion to approve the Farmington Public School 2018-2019 annual report.
Motion?
Second.
So this is a report that we provide to the town every year, and this provides kind of a snapshot of last year when it comes to our budget. It comes to achievements. We provide this to the town so that they can include it in their annual report, and you can see lots of wonderful news, all of which is familiar to you because we lived it last year as administrators, faculty, students, families, and the Board of Ed.
Any questions or comments? Okay, the motion to approve the Farmington Public School 2018-2019 annual report is presented. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. And item 7C, move into executive session to discuss a negotiation process between Farmington Board of Ed and the Farmington Education Association. So if I can have a motion to move into executive session.
Motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we're in going to session. Okay, we are now back in session. Back in session, if I can have a motion to approve the agreement between the Farmington Board of Education and Farmington Education Association for the three-year period, July 1, 2020 through June 30th, 2023, as I will present in detail.
Motion?
Second.
Okay, that motion and the contract changes will include the following. The contract between the Farmington Board of Education and Farmington Education Association will be a three-year agreement for the years 2020 through 2023. That agreement will include salary changes, which will be as follows. The agreement includes a 1.75 general wage increase for teachers at the top step of the salary schedule in years 1 through 3. The agreement also includes a 1.75 general wage increase for BA track steps 7 through 11, 8 through 11, and then 9 through 11 in years 1 through 3. And the agreement also includes for 1 year, year 1, an insertion of a new penultimate step and elimination of step 1. The agreement will also include a 1% increase in premium cost share over the 3-year period of the contract. And the agreement will also include the elimination of the teacher exchange program, a revised 1 recall procedure to 1 year rather than 2, the adjustment to the salary step placement of newly hired teachers to allow for more flexibility as determined by the superintendent. No newly hired teacher will be placed on the salary schedule with greater years experience credited than is set forth on the step conversions chart for Farmington service. And lastly, include Appendix C has been amended to increase the base value by 1.25% per year for the life of the contract 2020 through 2023. So all in favor?
Have a
Oh, and this is
discussion?
just years one and going forward.
Oh, year 1, okay.
Yeah.
So the third amendment in the salaries is the agreement includes for year 1 and going forward,
Yeah.
an insertion of a new penultimate step and elimination of step 1. So, thank you.
Can I just
So,
add something before?
absolutely, yep.
I would just like to thank the negotiations committee for their hard work over the summer into the fall. Andrea, Chris, Michelle, and of course, Alicia, your first time through. You did great, so thank you. Kathy, of course, and everybody else for coming and providing all the information, working hard, obviously Ship and Goodwin for, working with us. This has been a great experience serving on the negotiations committee. It's not often you get to head a committee that alone you are basically part of one of the largest fiduciary bodies of the town. Essentially, we are working probably, 40 to 50% of the budget through this committee that goes to the town. So don't take it lightly. It's been a great honor serving on it, and I think we did a very good job this year. So I appreciate everybody's hard work, their efforts, and thank you.
Good job, Mark.
And thank you, Mark, for leading the committee. You did a great job. So all in favor of the motion as presented?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion is approved. All right.
Just also thanking our teachers for their collaboration throughout the process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
FEA for their
Yeah.
help as well.
Okay, next item on the agenda, 8, consideration of the superintendent report. Can I have a motion to approve the financial report dated September 2019?
Motion?
Second.
Alicia?
I don't really have anything to add from what I had said previously about budget impact update. If there's any questions.
Any questions for Alicia?
Nope.
All right, the motion to approve the financial report dated September 2019, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion's approved. Item 9, reported board chair, updated committee meeting dates. I'll let you go first, Mark. Policy?
Policy?
Not policy.
I mean negotiations, yeah, negotiations.
Ratified contract, so.
Congratulations
It goes to the town, all right, so.
Take a victory lap.
There you go. I will.
Okay, policy.
Policy, we do not have anything scheduled at this time.
Okay, communications, Nutmeg, curriculum.
Curriculum, we just met before this meeting, so I expect to see some things on our coming agendas.
Going back.
Great, absolutely, yeah.
Communications, do we have a meeting?
I think, we had to reschedule.
Yep.
But I think Mary is setting something up
Okay.
soon. I think we had to reschedule because Ellen couldn't make it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that being said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions? We are adjourned.